It's time to create our very first Gadgeteer application. We'll begin by starting up Visual Studio 2010 and we'll go to New Project. If this page doesn't show up, you can still go up to File, New Project. Then we'll be presented with a list of templates. We're going to go to our Visual C# templates, Gadgeteer, and we'll choose the .NET Gadgeteer application version 4.2. You can change your project title and directory where it'll be saved here if you like, and choose OK. This will set up our project and create some default files for us, including our Gadgeteer designer, all of the references necessary to run a basic application, and our program.cs file, which will hold our main application. Once that's ready, you'll be presented with the Gadgeteer designer. And here you'll have a main board by default. It happened to set us up with a Cerberus main board, which is the device that I'm using for this demo. However, if you have a different device, what you want to do is come over to the toolbox, come down to Gadgeteer main boards, find your board, whether it be a Hydra, Spider, whatever, grab it, and you're going to left button drag and drop it out here in a white space somewhere. Let go, and it's going to say, do you want to replace? We'll say yes, and now we have replaced our Cerberus with a Cerberus. So now that we've got our main board defined for the app, we're going to jump over to our program.cs file. Just double click on that, and you'll see the program that it's created for you. First, it's set up you're using. These are going to be references to other libraries within code that we may need to use, and the only one we're going to use for this demo is the Gadgeteer assembly. And notice that it's put an alias here of GT, so whenever we want to reference this assembly, we'll be able to just say GT dot and whatever a class or function name is that we need. So we'll scroll down into our program started. This is where your program always starts, as it says. However, this fires before our event dispatcher. So what we want to do is we want to get in and out of here real fast. So our application is going to create a timer that our main code will run in, so that we can come into program started, create the timer, start the timer, and get out as fast as possible so that our events can begin firing. So what we'll do here is notice that it created one line of code for us, debug.print program started. And what this is going to do is it's going to print the word program started to the debug output window, which should be open down here. If it's not, you can come up to the debug menu, go to Windows, and choose output, and that will bring it to the foreground. So that gives us an indication that our program is actually running once we see program started down here. So what we're going to do is we'll create we're going to create our timer. So we'll say var timer equals new GT. So we're calling the Gadgeteer assembly, and we're going to use the timer class in there, and it has one parameter. We'll say 500, and that's going to be our interval in milliseconds of when this timer is going to fire. And then we'll say timer.tick. So this is going to be an event that fires every time the timer reaches that 500 millisecond mark. And when it fires, we want it to run some code. And so if we say plus equals, we can attach a new event handler to this event. And so notice here that our Gadgeteer SDK adds this nice little autocomplete option for us. So we can say tab here, and it will automatically create that code, and we'll hit tab one more time, and it will automatically generate the event handler. One other thing we have to do up here is say timer.start. If we don't do that, then our code will compile just fine, but it'll never actually execute our event handler. So now we'll come down to our event handler, and we're going to remove this exception that it's currently throwing, saying that nothing's implemented. We'll delete that, and we're going to add one line of code. Gadgeteer SDK includes a function called pulse debug LED. We'll choose that, and our application is complete. So now all we're going to do is we're going to plug in our Gadgeteer SDK, or I'm sorry, our Cerberus mainboard, plug it into USB, and we'll hit F5 or press the go arrow here. And when we do that, it's going to compile our application and start copying the bits over to our mainboard. And so you just kind of watch this status down here. You see it has pushed the code out, and now it's rebooting our board, and this program started, and this pulse debug LED called is being printed every time our event gets fired. And so if we look on our mainboard now, we'll see that the LED is indeed blinking. That was not blinking before. Congrats, you've created your very first Gadgeteer application. So I want to show you one more thing. We're going to stop this, and I'm going to show you one other way that we could handle events here. And this is probably the way I'll do it in most of the demos going forward, so I don't want you to be confused. If I've got an event handler that's only going to have one or two lines of code like this, what I'll use is I'll use a technique called lambda functions. So instead of having this event handler, what we'll do is we'll come up, and we were defining our event handler here as a delegate. We're now going to define it as lambda using this syntax, where we can say T1, this is going to be the argument that can be passed to our lambda, and then we'll just add our one line of code like that. So what this is doing is basically creating an inline function where we have one argument where it's going to pass a reference to our timer, and then it'll execute this function that has one line of code in it. So if we hit run right now, we get the same result as we did before, except it's a little easier to read. Now, if we were going to do a lot in this event handler, then I would recommend creating the separate function. Just makes it easier to keep your functions smaller. So now we'll see it's initializing, it's booting, and once again our LED is blinking. Just show you one more thing on this. If we were doing more than one line of code, what we can do is we can actually put brackets around this, and so now it looks like a regular function, and we can put as much code up here as we want. So that's lambda functions, and congrats again on creating your very first Gadgeteer application.